Hi everyone, so it's day 26, and today I'm going to talk about social anxiety again. And I think I said in an earlier video that I may at some point talk about like a breakthrough I had in terms of overcoming some of my deep social anxiety when I was younger. So I had got to this point when I was a teenager and really right through my teenage years where I really struggled to like do social things with other people, and certainly like uncontrolled social things, if that makes any sense. So if I was invited to a party or in my later years, if I was invited out to the pub or somewhere with some friends, I, I just felt uncomfortable if there was a group, say, of more than four or five people, or there was one or two people who I wasn't sure of. I would just feel really uncomfortable, and in the end, sort of avoid those sort of situations. I'd just say no to the invite. And I actually spent a lot of my teenage years in the summers not really hanging out with anyone and being very, very lonely. People probably thought I just liked my own company or I read books, whatever. But I was actually very socially anxious and very unsure of myself socially. I was sure of myself in a lot of other ways, but socially, I just really questioned myself. And, I'd maybe had some bad experiences when I was a bit younger, and I just didn't trust myself to do the right thing or say the right thing or not let somebody down, that sort of thing. Um, so by the time I reached about 18 or 19 and just finished secondary school, this had got to the point where it was really annoying for me, and I was really frustrated at myself um, that I couldn't do these sort of normal social things. I actually had started going to some counselling, and we were touching on these sort of topics a little bit, which was good to be able to talk about. Um, but it was all sort of coming to a head for me personally, and I just felt I needed to break it in some way. Um, there was one Friday night where a friend of mine phoned me up and said, well, asked me to go to the pub with him and say about four or five other people. And that night I got the invite. I remember being pleased to get the invite, but immediately being very scared. And I turned the invite down. And that really annoyed me that I turned it down, but that was easier for me to do. But I remember being so irritated with myself over the weekend and just saying, I can't do this. I can't keep turning down. And saying, if I get another invite, I'll definitely go. I have to go. I have to find a way to go. Um, yeah, so that sat with me all week. But then that following Friday, the same person rang me up and pretty much asked me if I wanted to do the exact same thing as the previous week. And there was a kind of resolve within me that just said, yes, I'll have to say yes. So I said yes. And really from that moment on, I chose to say yes to any invite, no matter what it was. I didn't judge the invite. I didn't think, do I feel like it or anything of the sort. I just decided that I was going to say yes. But that wasn't an easy yes in any way whatsoever. And every single time I had an invite for the next 6, 7, 8 months, I had to somehow support myself in going. So I would spend some time before I went thinking through my fears of the evening, thinking through what could happen, what I feared might happen, and then speaking some form of truth to the fears I had, and challenging them. But also encouraging myself that even if I ended up feeling weak or unsure at the event or whatever I was invited to, that I could just be okay to feel unsure. If I ended up with nobody and nobody talking to me, I could go into myself and say, you're okay. Um, you're okay. Be at peace in not talking right now, or, you know, maybe make a slight effort, but not put a lot of pressure on myself either. So it's really hard to describe just the amount of sort of levels and layers of thoughts that I sort of challenged before that first night of going out. And I even put on some music and motivated myself and, you know, encouraged myself that, I'm in a good place and got my energy up so that I was positive and energetic before I went out. And that first night I did go out, my fears ended up being unfounded. And, I was certainly very conscious through the whole period. The evening for me was very slow because I was very much in my head and I had all the fears running around in my head. But at the same time, I had an energy that somehow helped me through that evening. And when I did get home, I was very, very happy. The extent of the joy just to have been able to go, have an evening without it falling apart or me curling up in a ball in a corner and feeling I can't do this or wanting to run away. Like getting through the evening and feeling that it had gone okay. I was very, very happy. And that did buoy me to be able to move on and to repeat that situation. But I definitely made a conscious choice that I would say no to nothing. I would say yes to every invite, even, and I'd find a way to go. And that supported me because otherwise I would have convinced myself there was a sensible reason not to go. And the same process every time, listening to music, getting myself energetic, challenge the negative thoughts and going out and doing it was very good for me. The other thing I did during that sort of 8-month period was, even if I wasn't getting invited out or going out, if I felt some emotions going on within me that I felt uneasy about myself, I would stop myself. I remember sitting on my bed and I would try to track back when I started feeling uneasy. Because often I would have an uneasy feeling and I wouldn't really know what it was associated with. And often when I did that process of tracking back to the emotion or the incident that caused this uneasiness within me, I was able to identify it and then realize what sort of false belief was leading me to feel uneasy about myself. And again, I would challenge that belief and I would settle myself and I'd clear the emotion and I'd get settled again. So I think really those two processes, the clearing thing I just mentioned, and then the willingness to say yes to every invite, as well as to challenge the negative beliefs before I went with energy, was very, very instrumental in me getting over like intense social anxiety that I really had as a teenager. And looking back, I know how much that has given to my life. I know that if I had kept the same level of anxiety and fear of social situations that I had as a teenager and brought that into my adult life, I would have limited myself so much over the last sort of 20 years. So I'm really grateful that I did that. I'm really grateful for the friend who rang me up and invited me out. And I'm just really grateful that, there was something that gave me that energy at that time of my life to find that freedom at that point. So hopefully that explains a little bit of it and how it was for me. Maybe it might encourage someone who deals with it. If you don't deal with social anxiety of that kind, you might struggle to really understand it. But it really is an intense internal fear that you just kind of have to want to run away from. And to challenge it is really quite frightening. But what I discovered really was there was little in the fear, even though it felt so intense. So yeah, like that's just my experience of that. Hope it helps someone in some way potentially. And yeah, just happy to share it and say it's been a reality of something in my life. So yeah, I'm getting on to one of my longer videos, so I'll finish again now and look forward to tomorrow. Okay, thanks for listening.